One of the things about our show is it's going to be unique.
You are what you do. You can say any amount of things that you want to say, but what you do is what everybody sees.
People are like, "Oh, I'm just going to JV it." Like, it's just JV it. Like, what the hell does that mean?
I cannot tell you how excited I am to hang out with you guys today. So thank you so much.
Well, then that end buyer could come back and say, well, I didn't fully understand that it was subject to.
That's not a thing. Like, the SEC has thought of all of these things. They've been here since 1932.
And you can do what you want with your property.
Buyers have time, they have negotiating power, they have options.
Oh my gosh, I am blown away by your inexperience, and they've been in business 20 years.
And that includes things other people put on your property, right? It's your property, okay? Suddenly Cousin Jimmy's in a lawsuit.
A novation is replacing one contract or one obligation with another.
Out with the old, in with the new.
Yes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today, our topic is working with a loan servicer. I'm Andy Fowler, and I'm here with Sean St. Clair. If you're new to the show, make sure to give us a like, subscribe to our channel. You can find us on Facebook, and you can find us on YouTube. With that, we're going to go to Sean, who has our legal update.
Thank you, Andy. So for our legal update today, I'm going to continue our What If series. And so my what if topic for today is, what if multiple siblings inherit property and some want to sell the property and the others want to hold on to the property? What happens? So this is not an uncommon situation. A lot of times, mom and dad pass away, they leave the property to a sibling group, and the siblings can't agree on what to do with the property. Sometimes you may even have one sibling who's living in the property and not paying rent and is comfortable there. And, they view that as their home and they don't want to leave. And so, what happens in that case? Are the siblings who want to sell the property, are they then stuck with the property, or do they have any out or remedy? So if you remember, a few weeks back, we had attorney Nick Strom on our show, and we talked about partition actions. And partition actions are the remedy available to those siblings who just want to unload the property. They just want to sell. They want to, have their interest, purchased. They want to convey their interest, sell it. They don't want to own the property anymore. That would be their remedy. And so their remedy would be to actually go and file a lawsuit with the court and ask that the court order the property to be sold. Any individual or LLC or trust or corporation that owns real estate or an interest in real estate, even if that's in interest is 1%, they have the statutory right here in Arizona, and this is going to be across the nation as well, but they have the right to force the sale of the property. They can't be forced to hold on to the property simply because the other owners don't want to sell. They have a right to force the sale of the property and to be paid their interest from the property through that forced sale. And in Arizona, we call that forced sale a partition action, whereby the court enters an order and says, okay, owners, you have to sell the property and pay everyone their share of the proceeds. So that is the remedy. Now, from an investor standpoint, what becomes interesting there is a lot of times the siblings don't want to file a lawsuit against their other siblings, right? I mean, there's something distasteful sometimes about doing that. And they're like, I don't want to be in a fight with my other siblings. I don't want to be the one to kick the sibling living in the house rent-free that views it as their home. I don't want to be the one to kick them out, right? So a lot of times those sibling groups are looking for alternatives to that. The ones that want to basically convey the property or sell their interest. And so a lot of times investors can find, profitable deals or transactions by entering into agreements and actually purchasing whatever percentage the siblings own who want to sell the property. And then they are the ones, once they own a percentage of it, the investor would then be the one to file the partition action and to remove the sibling who's living in the home, have them removed from the property or sell it out from under them so that they are then removed. That way the siblings don't have to deal with it. They're able to cash out. Obviously, the price for 40% interest in property is generally going to be less than fair market value, or what that 40% interest would be worth if the property was sold on the open market, at fair market value. So the investor is able to, reap the rewards of taking a risk, buying it generally without title insurance, owning it, and then filing that partition action to evict the sibling that is there, squatting or holding the property hostage. So bottom line is, what if the siblings, what if siblings inherit the property? One group wants to sell, one group wants to hold on to the property. The group that wants to sell can file a partition action and force the sale of that property.
Sean, I'm going to throw you a little curveball. I don't think it's a big one, but I'm curious. We've always talked about this concept from the perspective of the investor, in that, wow, this could be such a good deal if you could buy out an inherited interest from a sibling and get it for pennies on the dollar or at a discount, and then go bring a partition action to resolve this. But what about if we looked at this from the perspective of the inherited sibling? Maybe they're watching this show and they're thinking, well, I didn't even know that this is an option. I've got my brother or my sister, whoever this might be, who's also inherited it, and they refuse to sell. I feel like there's no way out, but I'm learning that this is a potential option, and I could bring my own partition action, but I don't want to sue my sibling. So I'm going to try to find an investor. Where do you think they might go, and what would be the best way to try to hunt down the investor instead of the investor hunting down the sibling? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the ways to find or start networking or finding a reputable investor would be to attend a real estate investor meetup events. So for example, you and I sponsor the buy and hold meetup once a month at the Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors. And, we go and do our show live from there every, last Tuesday of the month. There's tons of investors there, many of whom would be interested in a transaction like that. So they could show up at those. There's the, state real estate investor association events. And then there's other just, groups that have these, networking events. I would start there and start just getting to know the investors, talking to them, kind of sharing, their situation. The other option, and this won't connect you to an investor, but I would definitely look for some legal advice or guidance first, and find out, what your real options are. And then, talk to real estate professionals, real estate agents, loan officers, other people who are familiar with the real estate space. They may know people who are willing to do that, to purchase those interests. But you want to make sure, obviously, that, you're working with reputable and who's going to treat you fairly. And obviously they're still looking to make a profit. So, you can't hope for, hey, I'm going to make fair market value on my 40% or whatever. But nevertheless, you want somebody who's going to, actually close and get the transaction done and completed, for you. But I would start there with the different networking and marketing events that investors groups put on.
All right. So we've been talking for the last month and a half about the Creative Finance Collective. We did an introductory episode with Alan Seschker back in May about wrap transactions, but we've been talking about the Creative Finance Collective as something that you're going to want to be a part of, especially if you as an investor or as an attorney want to learn more about creative finance, but not just to learn more about creative finance, to see how professionals discuss it, think about it, debate it, and figure out how best to attack it from multiple angles and multiple jurisdictions. The Creative Finance Collective is that opportunity. It's also an opportunity for you, the viewer, the investor, the lawyer, to watch, but ask questions throughout the entire hour. We're making ourselves and other members of the collective available. So we've been talking about it for a month. We're bringing it back, and it's starting again July 5th. So that is a week from tomorrow, Wednesday, and it'll be weekly. Sean, did you want to say a couple things about the collective and what the viewers can expect?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting and unique experience, I think, for the viewer, because they're going to be able to basically sit in and watch attorneys who are experienced in the creative finance space discuss different strategies for structuring these types of transactions. They're going to talk different terms that they like to see in, purchase contracts, loan documents for these types of transactions. They're going to talk about, the differences between jurisdictions. I know, for example, when we kind of did our test run with Alan Sesker, both he and I, we were talking, and both of us were like, oh yeah, I know what we're doing tomorrow. We're going to go back and revise some of our documents because, I learned a lot from him and he learned some stuff from me. And, where it's like, oh yeah, we need to add that term to, our purchase contract. But the listener is going to be able to, the investor who wants to either be involved in this space or is involved and just wants to gain additional knowledge and information, they're going to be able to watch these conversations unfold and take place, and then they can jump in and ask questions as well, and have basically, attorneys who are knowledgeable in this space there, who can provide answers. So it's a really unique opportunity. I'm excited about it. It's going to be July 5th. We're going to start publishing it so that you can, watch live through INRIM. And, the INRIM Facebook will be publishing it on like our social media feeds and things like that. So, take a look, keep track of us on INRIM, subscribe, follow, Andy and I on social media, and we'll be posting the links where you can watch this live, and then you can, chat by social media and by YouTube, and, put in your questions there in order to participate.
Yeah, and we've had this question a couple times, but you're going to be able to watch it live on 3 platforms: on Facebook, on our INRIM YouTube channel, and the INRIM Twitter channel. Yes, we have an INRIM Twitter channel. Any one of those, this isn't going to be a separate channel that you need to subscribe to. Subscribe to the INRIM podcast on YouTube, and we'll be taking questions the entire time. It'll be live there. Also, for today, a reminder, we're taking questions from you, the audience. So if you have any questions, make sure to post them. We reserve the final 15 minutes of the episode to take questions. If you've got questions for Sean or I, or questions for our guest, that is the time to do that. If you've got a question now and it's in your head and you're worried you might forget about it, don't worry. Post it in the chat, in the channel right now on the live feed. We'll get to it. And don't be worried about that. Just go ahead and post it and we will get to that. So with that, let's get into our topic today. So we are talking about the importance of loan servicers, and there's a variety of different areas within the law where loan servicers are not only just a good idea, but they're an idea in certain contexts where it can have legal consequences if you don't use a loan servicer. So they're an important consideration, especially with respect to a real estate investor kind of legal podcast. And we think it's an important topic. So today, to discuss the importance of a loan servicer, is Drew Lewis, CEO of Del Toro Loan Servicing and Evergreen Loan Servicing. Drew, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it. Yeah. So Drew, tell us a little bit about
you. Guys, thank you very much for having me. And so I don't know if you guys are quite as old as I am, but I started watching Carlton Sheets at 2 o'clock in the morning, ordering his cassette tapes when I was 9 or 10 years old, because I knew this was an industry that I wanted to be in. And it's good to see that now things happen in the daylight instead of 2 o'clock in the morning. But I love this industry, and you guys are talking about some great things.
Drew, what got you into loan servicing?
It was a little by accident. I was a securities broker right after college, and I chose that over being a lawyer because I realized I'd have to continue going to school to be a lawyer. I could get my securities license right out of college. And I did that for about 15 years. And I was looking for something simpler not realizing exactly what I was going to get myself into with a servicing company. But I started off as a hard money lender. I started off doing creative financing, everything that you guys talk about, that your guests talk about. And then I just started servicing my own loans. I started servicing loans for friends and family. And before I knew it, here we are.
So, Drew, what states do you operate in as a loan servicer?
Shoot, I think I'm losing you guys.
How about now? Can you hear us now?
You know,
Drew?
it's one of the things I was afraid you were going to ask. I had a cheat sheet. We're in 14 different states. Of course, the Western states, what I call kind of the easy, simple states, which, you know, Arizona, Nevada, California. California is really not too bad because that's where I started. So I'm used to a lot of the difficult stuff. But we are primarily in trust deed states. And we're actually looking at probably lightening up our footprint from these 14 down to 7 or 8, just because of the confusion around multiple states, their requirements, their licensing, and then also some of the states are just making it very difficult to do what we do or what our clients do, which is more of the creative side of the financing world. The wraps, the seller carries. We have a lot of short-term fix and flip loans. So I believe that keeping it a little bit smaller is going to allow us to provide a lot better services to the states and the customers in the states that take a little more favor to what we do.
Now, Drew, you mentioned you got into loan servicing, kind of doing it on your own as a real estate investor and working into it. So for the listener who's watching, who maybe is just now touching real estate investing, seeing what it is, why don't you explain for them really kind of at a baseline level, what is a loan servicer? What do they do and what are they able to provide?
To me, a loan servicer, I guess to put it in common lay terms that most people can understand, we're a property manager for people's investments in trust deeds. And I don't know how property managers make so much more money than we do. You know, contrary to popular belief, you do not make much money servicing loans at $15 or $20 per month. But there's different varying tiers of what we do and what other servicers do. It could be as simple as we send statements and we collect payments. It's a little bit more than that. You know, we do the accounting and the back office administration for much of that. We do the year-end tax statements, et cetera. That's your basic tier. But then we have people on staff that will go all the way up to consulting, expert witness work. We can handle loan modification requests. It's good to have a neutral third party in between the borrower and the lender. And then we do also offer trustee services. And we find that if you're working with a good servicer and you can start before the loan closes, you can prevent a lot of stuff up front. Most of the problems that we see could have been dealt with, prevented, avoided pre-close. But if they do end up to be a problem, having that neutral party makes a big difference between, confrontation, litigation, losing a property. And I happen to run what I like to call the least profitable foreclosure company in the United States. It's our goal to have 0 foreclosures. And we structure things so that we actually earn more if we work out a deal between the borrower and the lender than if we do foreclose on the property.
So you mentioned trustee services, and so just for the listener, just so that they can understand or appreciate, basically you service the loan, you collect the payments, but if the borrower stops paying for some reason or the other, engages in some other default, you have the ability in-house to offer the lender the ability to foreclose without sending it out to a third party, without hiring a law firm or anything. You guys can, prepare the foreclosure paperwork. You can notice the sale, and you can actually complete the sale of the property on behalf of the lender all in-house, so that they don't have to go anywhere else. It's just provided as, obviously there's a charge and stuff, but it's provided by you guys as all one package, basically.
Right. What we have found is, since I purchased Evergreen Escrow and Evergreen Note Servicing a couple of years ago, that was a culture shock, and that's maybe something for another day to go more in depth with. But the overall with Evergreen versus Del Toro, it's the Evergreen portfolio is made up mostly of seller carries and wraps, and what we found was the options that many of these people chose. We've got people there who don't know what to do when a loan goes into foreclosure. They are either uneducated when it comes to, or when it falls behind, when it goes into default. They're either uneducated, or many of them are even, we've found, embarrassed to come forward and tell somebody, hey, our borrower or our buyer is not performing. So that's one of the great things about the ability to have a lot of that stuff in-house, because we have access to the records. We talk with these people. We can open those lines of communication. And we found that so many times the buyer wants to talk to the seller. The seller wants to talk to the buyer. They want to work things out, but neither party got into this highly educated with the right information. There's a lot of things that we would do very differently if we were involved with these transactions before they closed. But in order to, one, it's our industry. I came from, when I got in this business, and even recently, there's a perception that because we're creative, that there's something wrong with it. And there's not. However, when we have these situations where people are uninformed or they're unintelligent about, they're lacking that experience, it does cause problems and it damages our industry. And I love what we do. I think this is the greatest industry in the world, far better than when I was a securities broker, because if you're lending right and you're buying right, you have one heck of a possible downside before you really lose any money. So doing this stuff in-house, and especially with the clients that we're working with at Evergreen, to them, it makes the difference between them getting their cash flow that they're banking on. This is their retirement money, or this is the money that they live on to pay their bills. So reconnecting those people and working something out, hell, it feels good. And that's what we do in this business. That's what we do in this industry.
Now, you mentioned licensing before. So what type of licenses do you have to have in place in order to act as a loan servicer or note servicer?
Yeah, that's another good question. Different states have different criteria. See, unlike the securities industry or other things, in the securities industry, you have one nationwide license and you follow the same regulations all over. And if you want to do business in Utah, you just notify Utah, you pay a $250 fee, and you're doing business in Utah. The servicing world and the brokering world, there are many states that are confusing. Do you need a debt collector's license? Do you need an escrow license? Do you need a loan servicing license? In California, if you have a real estate broker's license, you can do anything. You can be a property manager, you can be a loan servicer, you can be a real estate agent buying and selling properties, you can be a real estate broker originating loans. But in most states, it is some form of a debt collection or a brokerage license. And what they're looking for is, are you a stable company? Do you have a reputable background? Are you insured? Do you have the proper, policies and procedures in place? And I think, gosh, I'll tell you that leads to one other thing. I wish more people did their homework before they sign up for a loan servicer, or really anybody in the business for that matter. We process $300 million a month in business, and nobody ever in 20 years has ever asked to see our quarterly audits or our annual audits, to check our insurance. And maybe somebody out there would be that first person that says, hey, you know what, I really want to do my homework. And again, that's one of those things that I think hurts the business, hurts the industry, is where there's unclear expectations, but also whether it's accidental or intentional, there are people in this industry that don't contribute well to our image. It is a tricky business. It's not just collecting a check and posting a payment. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And that's why it requires a license. However, I wish it was a lot clearer. Many states, you can get a conflicting answer depending on who in their department you talk to. That's why I have good people doing it for me.
So Drew, let's talk about the different types of transactions where you as a loan servicer think it would be important to have a loan servicer. As a loan servicer, I'm sure you think, and you're probably correct, that just about every transaction should include one. But let's talk about a number of them, some that our listeners and investors may be involved in. Let's start with a basic one: seller carryback transaction. Sellers back the loan as the lender, and the buyer is going to pay them. Is that important to have a loan servicer in your mind?
Yeah, you're right. Every transaction, unless you have your own servicing department or some qualified, there should be some qualified exempt party involved. But especially with, let's say, wrap accounts with seller carries, it's very important, I believe, as a selling tool also, to make the sellers more comfortable with the transaction. And when you have that neutral third party, even in families, we have families that reach out to us and say, this is a dad lending money to the daughter. And that contract makes the difference. It's holding them accountable now to a third party. In the seller carry world and in the wrap world, there's a lot of things that can go wrong accidentally, because there's things that can happen along the way. You've got a grace period with the loan. If it's a wrap, that first mortgage needs to be paid in a certain period of time. So you might be paying by the end of your grace period, but in a couple more days, it's the end of the first lien's grace period. And there's going to be time in between you making that payment and that other first position lien getting paid. In seller carry transactions, it is great to have somebody who can talk to both parties, consult with both of them so they are informed and can make the right decisions. So many things. I mean, we're talking $15-20 a month. Some of our services are more, $50 to $75 a month. But in those situations where you may have a seller who is not very well versed, they're going to be more comfortable. And I think that adds more sales to those of the people that are out there hunting down those deals.
Well, even the buyer's going to be more comfortable too, because the buyer's going to know, hey, I'm writing a check to, Evergreen, and then Evergreen's going to take that check and they're going to make sure that the subject to or the remaining loan gets paid every month, right? Versus if they write the check directly to the seller, who knows what the seller's going to do with the money? I mean, they could, forget or fail or choose not to pay that loan, and now you have a mess on your hands, a foreclosure for which you as the buyer weren't even the original borrower. But with a loan servicer in place, okay, there's some accountability here of a reputable company I'm writing that check to, and they're going to make sure that that first position loan gets paid. Now, let me ask you this, and this is important for dispositions on subject twos. Let's say somebody has a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan in place, for example, and they're going to leave that loan in place. So they're going to sell it subject to. Now on the wrap loan, what due date would you as the servicer recommend
You got
to make
you
sure
guys
that those
you guys are
payments-
cutting out on me a little bit. I'm going to see if I can.
All
Okay,
right.
I
Can you
think
hear
I
us
understand your
better
question. You're cutting out on me a little bit, and hopefully you guys can hear me well. If I understand you correctly, we're talking about due dates, and we're talking about protecting that first position. And if I misunderstood that, then this would be a good topic
That's-
anyway.
that's perfect.
So we require, if you're going to work with us, a wrap loan needs to be paid 1 month in advance. I also believe that having a uniform due date of the first of the month, not that it really matters, but that's traditionally what's in our heads as when our bills come due. It is the busiest time, of course, the first 10 days of a month, busiest time for a loan servicer. But by putting a cushion in there between that first mortgage being paid and receiving that check from the buyer, now you've got some calm, some peace of mind that's going to the seller of the property, and we assure them that we'll notify them if things go wrong, if we don't have a payment in time, and allow for the buyers. This allows them to not need to focus on this stuff. They can go out and close more deals, and to have a good loan servicer that can reach out, that can be a reference for these people. That's another positive that impacts the buyers. You've got somebody who can vouch for you.
So do you want to then see on the wrap loan the payment to be made on or before the first day of the month? Is that what you're wanting on the wrap loan?
I heard wrap loan a couple times. Let's see if you can repeat, see if I can hear you better.
Yeah. So do you recommend the payment due date on the wrap loan to be the first day of the month, or is there another date that you recommend?
I heard wrap loan during the month. Are we talking about payments?
The due date. What due date?
The
what
due date.
do
Yeah. Okay. With the due date, the first of the month is fine. The 30th of the month, the 15th of the month are all fine if the infrastructure is set properly. Because if you're one payment ahead, it doesn't matter. If you are going to be, if there's not going to be a payment ahead of time, then it should be at least a week or two before that payment is due, not before the end of their grace period. Because one thing that we do that is very common, I mean, it's 100% in California, but I'm finding other states don't require what we do, which is a hold on checks. When I took over Evergreen, they would disperse money. Actually, they disperse it before that money even hit the bank. And in California, that's a huge no-no. But because we have a 5-day hold on that money to allow for it to have a really good chance to clear or bounce, that can delay. So if you've got a grace period on a seller and a wrap, it's due on the 1st, late on the 11th, well, shoot, we're going to hold that check for 5 days, and then we're going to mail a check to the 1st, unless there is some type of a ability to ACH pay it, something along those lines. But if that was the case, if they're not going to be paid in advance, or if they're not going to have a month in advance, set that due date the middle of the previous month.
Drew, tell us about agreements for sale, also known as contracts for deed. Is that important to use a loan servicer in your mind, and what are the issues to work through there?
Yeah. Again, there is so much value, even with the basic loan servicers, that all they do is just post and send out statements. Maybe they send a late notice. In these situations, we hold original documents. In some cases, we will hold an assignment or a transfer deed, or a deed in lieu. for people so that the seller has protection and the buyer has protection. So that neutral third party again can take the terms of the contract and help enforce them. Because otherwise, who's going to hold these documents? You can't necessarily trust them with the buyer, and you can't necessarily trust them with the seller. And that's just another service that people need so that you can have peace of mind. We do reach out and we make a late phone call every 2 weeks. We offer modifications and forbearance agreements. We try and get the parties talking, but if there is no communication and you have these documents ahead of time, then we can, based on our contracts together, enforce those pre-signed transfers or agreements.
Well, and I will tell you, the holding of those original documents is huge. Part of my practice is doing some title curing work. And I've had a number of cases, one in particular where it was a seller carryback. The original seller and lender passed away, and they were servicing their own paper. And then, 20 years later, my client goes to sell the property and they're like, yeah, I paid off that loan, but it's still showing up. So then I,
Right.
track down the heirs and I'm like, hey, you guys need to release this because it's been paid off. And they're like, oh no, it's not been paid off. They owe me money. And I say, okay, well, how much? And they come up with some number out of the sky. And I say, okay, that's fine. If that's your position, then I need to see the original note or a copy of it at a minimum. And I need accounting of all payments that were made. And of course, they don't have any of that. And then I'm like, well, you guys, so even if anything was owed, I'm like, you can't make this claim unless you can prove to me what the exact loan terms were and what the payments, were made and how they were applied. Otherwise, you need to just release and convince them to release. So even if money was owed, they'd be out because they didn't have the original documents to support, their position. So, to me, having that servicer in place to, give some legitimacy to the, accounting, to the loan itself, that's huge. That is invaluable.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. I tell people, you can pay me $20 a month for great service and great advice, or you can pay me $5,000 a day later to fix your problems. In my experiences, especially as a foreclosure trustee and as a servicer, I think we've been in, I'm going to say 250, 300 lawsuits in the last 20 years. And none of these situations was it ever that the servicer or the foreclosure trustee did anything inappropriate or wrong. Otherwise, we would have never made it there. We've done stuff wrong, but we fix it. And only a couple times was there really a bad lender involved. So that's just a part of the equation. So when we see these conflicts, a lot of it stems from, again, things that could have been done properly pre-close. I see one of the viewers says they have a wrap and the servicing company will not work with them until they close. Wrong servicing company. Part of that comes from they don't want to give advice. I understand that. Part of it also comes from what if the deal doesn't close and they're wasting their time? Again, I go back to, I love our industry. I'm as flattered if you open one account with me as if you transfer in 800 loans with me, because I believe every loan we are doing something to allow people to buy homes that they otherwise couldn't. We're allowing people to make money, be entrepreneurs, have passive income. And a big part of it comes from unclear closing instructions, unclear loan documents. I could spend forever talking about crazy lawsuits and how it could have been prevented. And also the problems that pop up when the wrong people do the loan docs. We've got loans right now that have no maturity date. And also in that same loan, it just says we'll make 360 payments. It does not say 360 monthly payments. And this is a loan from a mother to a son who passed away, and now the 3 other siblings own that note. And they contacted us to foreclose on the note. And sadly, I had to say, you really don't have any grounds to stand on because there's no maturity date. And it just says 360 payments, not monthly payments. So we see a tremendous amount that could have been prevented, and holding docs is a big one also.
Well, yeah, let's talk about, the whole note buying and selling industry. Talk to us about, if somebody wants to, say, sell their note, what's the benefits of having a servicer in place to, facilitate that or allow that?
Yeah. I've got some great people that we work with, and intelligent people who built great businesses. And there's things that they wish they had done that could have been prevented during note sales. One is missing something when you're selling. Are you selling as of a date where there's late fees that person's going to be inheriting? Who gets those late fees? Who gets those back payments? So many of these things are made where I can look at it and say, I completely understand what you meant to do. However, that comma there makes a huge difference. You guys know, you guys understand the way you can stick a finger in a crack, right? But some of the other things that are happening, and this goes from state superior court judges that have been duped. Many of the people that I work with that have been in the business 30 years have been duped recently on note sales because one of two things: either they're wiring to a bad false buyer from the beginning, or when they're getting the wiring instructions from the right appropriate party, they're not sending it to an escrow company or a title company. They're sending it directly to the buyer, and they're trusting that the buyer is going to send them back the signed documents. Who gives stuff first, right? eBay never had eBay escrow or whatever it's called until a few, handful of years ago. In the first few years, it was buyer beware. There are so many people out there that are focusing on stealing money via changing wiring instructions in emails. And that money is gone. You will not get it back. For $100, $150, if there is money going from a fund control, the lender can send us that 50 grand. We'll bring it into the account, and then we will collect the receipts from the rehab or the builder, and then the lender acknowledges and agrees to then disperse the money. It's the same way with a note purchase, and I love note purchases. There's a lot of, especially back in 10, 11, and 12. That was a really good time to buy notes. But there's fraud everywhere. The more sophisticated an industry gets, the more sophisticated criminals get. And if you've got uneducated people, it's a feeding ground for these bad people. For a couple $100, use an escrow company or a servicing company. Absolutely.
Right.
I'm curious, Drew, does whether a note is being serviced, let's use the example of a seller, Carrie, and they didn't use a note servicer, but they want to sell their note. Does whether the note is being serviced by a servicing company impact its marketability and what buyers might be willing to pay on the open market for the note? Is that, or do you know?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely it does. And I will share with you, first of all, I am the only person that I know of in over 100,000 loans that has ever had a due on sale clause enforced. If things go wrong, it usually happens to me, which is why I'm now that neutral party. I'm going to take a little piece of everybody's deal. But when you're talking about, shoot, my phone just rang. I got disorganized for a second. recap your question for me one more time. There was something in it specifically I wanted to address.
Yeah, we were talking about the marketability or the unmarketability for that matter.
Yes. So a handful of years ago, 9 years ago, I purchased some non-performing loans from a client of mine. And some of them, we managed to get re-performing. And over time, I bought some of the performing loans from this same client. And upon taking 13 loans from that client in my servicing portfolio, so I know the history of all of these loans, 13 loans I purchased, I sent out a notice to the customers that said, hey, you're still sending checks to Del Toro. Everything's still going to be the same. You log into the same portal to see your account. But I've noticed that your account is paying on time. However, you're 6 months delinquent, and I don't want to be charging you a late fee every month while you're performing. So if you sign this modification agreement, we're going to move you current. No more late fees. And we're just going to roll the previous balance minus a nice treat we're going to give you of discounting a whole bunch of those late fees to the end of the loan. 12 out of 13 of those borrowers stopped paying that month. And I learned the lesson of let sleeping dogs lie. If I wouldn't have been servicing that portfolio, of course I would have known that was fraud, right? But it wasn't. I was servicing that portfolio. It was just that lightning strikes. But what I found was, like, let sleeping dogs lie. I did not need to go and do that. I could have just done it, right? Some of these things, we do need those agreements. We do need signed contracts. But sometimes it's just better to go do what's right and explain it later if you don't have that agreement than to let it continue. So yes, having a servicer that can validate those transactions, absolutely, because you now have a reputable company that has nothing to gain by misleading a buyer of a note. And I have seen, there's another story for another day, a lawsuit this was a group of 8 lawyers who were buying notes, $1 million note purchase. And it went incredibly wrong. And there were a couple things that they didn't think of so that we could trace down the money. We could prove the fraud. To me, that's very simple to go do because 100,000 loans, when things get escalated to me, they're significant. So we get to trace all that stuff. Years ago, I was doing consulting for the San Diego District Attorney's Office, working with fraud victims of loan fraud and mortgage fraud. And you could be a great doctor, but you don't operate on everything, right? You're not specialized. With these things, by sheer misery, I've become really experienced in helping people prevent those issues that can go wrong. And yeah, having a servicer in place, again, spend the money. I mean, $15, $20 a loan, you're going to find some servicers that'll give you a bulk discount. I don't know. I believe you get what you pay for. But if you look at it, is it going to get you more for your portfolio later when you're selling it? Or is it going to avoid some problems and conflict? Tell you what, I haven't seen any lawsuits that cost less than $100,000. And some of these lawsuits are absolutely ridiculous. So prevent what you can.
So, Drew, it looks like we have a few questions here. So one of the questions, pretty basic. They said, hey, I missed the 14 states you work in, but they specifically want to know, do you work in Texas?
We do work in Texas, yes.
Perfect. And then another question is, there's from an online listener. They said that they have a sub-2 deal and the payment has been changing from month to month and the HOA fee went up. So they say, how are you as a loan servicer becoming aware or keeping aware of the changes and increasing the payment amounts so there won't be a shortage?
There's a lot of these things that it's garbage in, garbage out, or it's success in and success out. We can do just about as much work as somebody needs us to do. But many people will find, and we find, when people talk to me, we're like, yeah, we can absolutely do that for you, but it's $100 or that's $500. They don't have to use us for that thing. They can do those things themselves. And for us to go and request these updated charges. Now with taxes and insurance, we track that stuff that we're on. But
Right.
if there are, and we've got some of these first position loans that are variable rates, or they do change different things along the way. So we are proactive about, we will send a quarterly reminder or we'll keep track of those dates where things can change. And we will send a notice that says, hey, please confirm this. If we don't get a statement back, we look to absolve ourselves pretty darn quickly, because if the buyer or seller is not cooperating on their side, we will try very hard, because we're going to get dragged into the litigation or we're going to have the problems. We will, to try and protect ourselves, go out there and try getting this information, but we will bill you for it. Be proactive, deliver things to your loan servicer, and ask questions. I say the only dumb question is one that you've asked 3 times and you should already know. Do a little bit of your homework, tee it up for people. You will be much better. You'll be much better received at your attorney's office or your servicing company or wherever you're going if you tee things up for them and they can just give you that feedback without having to give you a 15-minute explanation. We've got 30,000 clients. I take almost every single sales call and I take almost every single complaint, but man, tee it up for me, and complain, by the way. We want to know when you've got a question or a complaint, because there's days I can't necessarily mind 5 offices, 75 employees all the time. We want to know what's going on, and you will reach me.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So go ahead, Andy.
No, go for it, Sean. I know where you're going.
So you mentioned that you're the one that, kind of does the intake and takes some of the sales calls. So let's say that, I'm doing a subject to transaction, my first one ever. I'm going to let's say I'm a seller. I'm going to do a wrap financing transaction. I want to use Evergreen as my servicer. Where do I start? What do I do?
Another good question. Where we would like you to start is before the transaction, reach out to us. We want to make sure that we can have some input. We're not going to look to dominate. And at this point, we rarely ever even charge for this service. That's where the key starts. List your servicer. If your servicer is like us, and there are many that are also trustees, list them as the trustee on your deed of trust. That saves time and trouble and confusion later. In your promissory note, put down who the servicer is going to be. Ask them. This is such a key thing. And I ask every vendor that I ever do business with, I say, can you tell me how I become your best customer? What process do you want me to follow? What things can I do so that we don't have conflict? And I think that's one of the things. Ask your servicer, what do you offer? What do you do? And review the servicing agreement before you've already committed to a servicer. Then, you can reach out via our website. We are consolidating Allegro, Adept, Evergreen, Del Toro, all under the brand of Private Lending 360, PL 360. That website will be up and operational in the next 30 days. You just go there. You can submit a request right there. You can submit a chat. Then if you need a phone call, call in. And then what we can do is walk you through the process. We can send you the setup forms. It's basically, we're collecting the information that we need in order to make that transaction better. And one of the things we're also going to do, we collect a little more information than most servicers out there, because if we've got the recording number, many people send us the file before it's recorded, or they don't follow up. This was a lot more prevalent back when you couldn't do instant recording. But there's certain things that we use down the road to make the reconveyance process easier. to make modifications and forbearances easier and better. So read people's websites, bring them in as early as possible, read the servicing agreement. We don't want to have honest misunderstandings later. I hate saying, Bob, refer to section 7, line item 3 of the servicing agreement. And they go, shit, I didn't read that. You signed it. We went over it. That's where it starts. And
Well,
go to a
Drew,
person's website, fill
yes.
out that. And if you have questions and people are cutting you short, wrong place to work with.
So many of these problems seem to come down to an investor trying to save a few bucks. And it sounds like when you're starting this, instead of approaching it, especially if you're doing a creative finance transaction, which by definition is creative and might get exotic or might do some things that are beyond the conventional, that you really price in what it's going to look like to do it right, to have it tracked correctly from a note servicing perspective, and not worry too much about pennies here and there or dollars here and there.
Right.
So
It is saving a few pennies, but the majority of it is, I get this every day. Drew, I've been doing this 20 years. I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it. Well, not necessarily, certainly regulations change, but the tone of the environment changes. You know, 90% of my day is involved in litigation in one fashion or another. It's either my expert witness work, it's consulting work, or it's managing our clients' litigation. And I've seen so many times ego, pride, take a bigger loss or impact on a transaction. I say just because it's legal does not mean you should do it. And that probably outweighs the 15 or 20 bucks. Pride, ego, believing that they can, I don't know, that there's not that finesse, the ability to massage a situation. And again, that's where a servicer comes in. Many servicers, not all of them do that. And the ones that are basic, they serve a great purpose. I wouldn't use a full service loan servicer. If I needed one, I know what the heck I'm doing. But the majority of people should.
yeah,
Don't be proud. Don't have an ego.
I found that so many legal problems start, especially in real estate, start with good intentions. I'm going to be able to track the loan payments. I'm going to be able to do all of those things on my own. I'm really good at these kind of things. And I'm like, I'm sure that you are. And in life, you probably are in a lot of these things. But I've served as trustee and trustee sales enough times to know when I don't have a note servicer to work with, there's a good chance I'm going to find errors when we go to do this trustee sale where they didn't track all the interest properly and apply late charges properly. You know, it's a total mess. So the idea of foregoing the benefits of having a note servicer in these kind of deals just seems to be incomprehensible. Well, Drew, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. We really appreciate it. Tell our listeners how they can find you and connect with you.
Guys, you're cutting out on me. I will wrap up and just say thank you guys very, very much. I look forward to watching more of your content. I love the people that you guys have on. It's great for our industry. Thank you for having me. And I hope to be able to help some of the viewers just continue to make money and make our industry look good. So reach out, say hi.
All right, Drew. Thank you so much for being with us. With that, everybody, that is our episode. Make sure to be with us next week for the Creative Finance Collective. Next week, Tuesday, also is the 4th of July. We hope you have a good holiday weekend. We'll see you next time.
Have a good day, everyone.